I inherited the over 50 club, and I'm glad for the Board of Deacons that launched it in '67. And as I understand it, at one time they had the Penn Hotel over here, and people lived there, older people, but upright citizens. And so they engraved invitations and took them to these various places where older people, called the Over 50 Club. And I think it was really kind of neat the way they did that. And so when I was here, indigents began to come, not in great numbers, enough for us to kind of say, is God leading us into this kind of service and ministry? And fortunately, the spirit of Fort Street, as embracing as it has always been, said, if this is what God wants us to do, we're going to do it. And we were meeting down in the Donna Room. Do they still call it the Donna Room? We were meeting there, and we had
square tables with
square
red
tables.
checkered tablecloths.
Mac McLennan made those tables, and they had tablecloth. We brought dessert to the table of 4.
Served coffee. I used to, we'd go around and serve coffee.
Fred Sarche played the piano, and
You always had a joke.
I went through Reader's Digest. Joke of the week. So I learned to be a stand-up comic, but not very good.
They would show a movie for entertainment. It was really a totally different program.
They went to the Detroit Library, and they'd bring down an Abbott Costello. And it was really nice. And then in 1980, everything really changed, because it was at that time that we were thinking in terms of renovating this building. And I'm always grateful to Rob Sherrill, because McCafferty was the architect that was asked to do a rendering of how the building would look after the Sunday school was put in the gym. And it was Rob Sherrill who said, I wonder what would happen if we flipped that over and we had the open door meet in the gym and have a real nice place over on the other side. And the elevator was a part of that. But it just happened that when we did that renovation, there was a depression, not a recession is better, in the nation. And the numbers just escalated. I mean, we were talking about 150 one week, and then 175, and then 200. And pretty soon we were serving 400 or 500 people without that space, with a guest coming in off the parking lot. We could never have done it. So I've mentioned Tuesday Break, significant program. My contribution to the Open Door, which I think is that, remember I built a trust level, kind of a blank check. I don't know that everybody was wild about serving indigents, but it was kind of like, well, if the pastor is leaning in that direction, we'll sort of go along. And I was grateful for it, because I didn't remember any battles of poor people coming of great numbers. And then the third area that I feel some contribution towards is, and some listening to me this morning may not like this, but we had a quartet, professional quartet. They sang wonderfully well. Professional voices, professional selections, but Fort Street's membership was starting to grow. And we had people who said, I like this church, but I'd like to do some singing. I'm a very passive kind of a guy, and very patient, and I think Ed remembers this differently than I do. So this gives me a chance to correct the record just a little bit. I said to Ed, you conduct or lead a volunteer choir, or I will. He said, okay, I'll do it. So so we stayed with a volunteer choir and a quartet for a long time. My hope was that we would have Imogene lead the sopranos of the volunteer choir, contralto with Mary Rivens. It never really kind of worked that way. But pretty soon the chorale was in such great numbers that they were doing more and more singing.
Well, and Ed brought in his students, and then the idea of the Messiah production.
That's what really did it.
Right.
The Messiah.
Right. And then it really became a large production and a large choir.
And I have one more to share before we open it up for questions. The fourth thing that I feel very proud about, and it's God's doing. I messed up once, big time, because the Penn Hotel was for sale for $90,000. I was not sharp enough in that scene to say, let's buy that. We need that parking lot. Because the building, Penn Hotel, it cost $300,000 to tear it down. So we just sort of blocked it. I blocked it out of my mind. But over here, there was a for sale sign for years and years. I did my banking at the manufacturer's bank. I must have passed it 300 times. Then one day, out of the blue, I said, I wonder how much they want for it. So I got on the phone with Gary Spicer. I said, Gary, would you inquire and see what that piece of land is worth? Well, it turned out that it belonged to the Sisters of Mercy, a Catholic group who were also kind of open to another charity group that might be interested. Well, to make a long story short, Gary negotiated a deal for $200,000, I think it was. The very next morning, the attorneys at Detroit News say to Gary, how did you do that? And so we had a debt of $200,000, but I think it's been paid now because I've been gone. But it's for the future of the church. But then when I was walking up the street the other day, I thought, well, maybe they built the MGM parking lot deck for 4th Street when it gets to the point. So I'll draw that to a close for questions and answers.
Our comments.
Comments.
I think everybody in the room here practically went through a lot of this with us, so you have a lot of memories to share too.
And if there's any inaccuracies in what I said,
Just let it go by.
it's an age thing. I've reached the point where I can take advantage of that a little bit. So, hi everybody.